Hello and welcome back to the Dicebreaker podcast. It's episode 55.
Shivity, shivity, shifty, 55. Shabity, shwoosh, 55. My IQ is 55. Girlfriend's age, 55. Anybody know that
Is that
song?
the actual
No?
bingo call?
No, it's not the bingo call.
I
That's
was
a
going to
song.
say.
I don't know what that song
You don't know what that is? 55.
I've aged 45 years in the space of about 20 seconds.
I think that was like a pretty big like YouTube song when I was like 17, and I love it. And it's a good
YouTube song.
song.
In my day, songs came out of record players.
The actual bingo call, if you care to know, is Snakes Alive. 55 Snakes Alive.
Whoa!
It's alive.
Yeah, I decided to look up why, and I love the way this has been written. If the number 5 is one little snake, it's no surprise that 55 is Snakes Alive, making this the double whammy of a visual gag and a rhyme.
Wow! It's just too perfect. It's like a miracle. It's the rhyme and the visual gag.
It's everything you've ever wanted. This is it. This is the episode that everybody needs to listen to.
Yeah, that's what we aim for on the Dicebreaker podcast, is everything you've ever wanted.
Yeah.
Bingo calls, references to YouTube videos that only Lolies remembers. We are, of course, here to chat about board games. I'm Matt Jefferson, I'm the editor-in-chief of Dicebreaker. I'm joined this week by just two of the team. Wills is out. I was going to say on assignment. He's not. He's just having a well-earned time off. So I'm joined this week by Alex Lolies. How you doing, Lolies?
Yo, this is me. I'm gonna tell you a story about me, and I'm here. Hi.
Great. It's good to have you. And Alex Meehan.
I
how you
broke
doing?
me in.
Yeah, I'm here. I was really worried that was going to turn into like a Mario or / Italian joke. So
No, never.
luckily it didn't quite go in that direction. I'm witnessing it all.
Bear witness to whatever this is. Let's dive in, as we usually do, with what we've been playing this week. Lolies, let's start with you. What have you been playing lately?
I'm literally just filling in the sheet as you were talking.
Professionalism.
Yeah, pro. I have played, not a huge amount, but I have played a couple of games, one of which is Tobago. So by the time this goes out, people will have seen the You've Never Played that Wheels and I did together, where we played one of my favorite games that I believe is out of print. It's quite hard to get a hold of, called Tobago. I've talked about it on the podcast before, but it's like kind of I would almost say it's like semi-co-op, because you do work together to find treasure, but then when you find the treasure, it's like every man for himself kind of dealio. It's a treasure hunting game, which I really, really like, and yeah, if you haven't seen that video, you should go check it out for anyone who's listening. I've also played a lot of Star Realms. I'm back on my Star Realms horse. I think it's partly to do with the fact that about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, Wise Wizard Games have launched tournaments on the app. So they host, I think it's like daily tournaments, and they're just like casual tournaments. I've done 2. I did not win either of them. But yeah, the first one, I think there was like 43 people playing, and I came like 32nd or something. And then the second tournament, there was only, I think, 22 of us. So I was like, ooh, the chances are better. And I came like 18th or something. I don't know. But I've really been enjoying that element, and like just being able to like, because I did a tournament a few months ago when they did like an online one. And I really enjoyed that, but it dragged a bit because there was a lot of wait time. Whereas the way they've done it on the app, it's actually quite quick. Like, I think I spent an hour on the first one because it was a 6-round Swiss round, where you fight against 6 people, and then based on where you land, it tells you if you go through, and then the top 8 will essentially go like through like elimination rounds with each other. But yeah, you can win like credits that you can then spend on other things on the app. You do have to spend credits to enter. It's like 100 credits. I don't really know what that translates to in money. But yeah, anyway, it's a really cool new addition to the app. So I've been playing that a lot, and like, well, not a lot because I only have so many credits. But I've played a couple of tournaments, and then that, because I was playing tournaments, it kind of made me like want to play regular games as well. And the arena, which is a way that you can earn credits as well. So I've been playing arena as well. I don't know if you know about arena, but like they give you a new set of rules every week on arena, and then for that week
cool.
you can like play that and you can win like foil cards, credits. I don't remember what the top prize is. I think it might just be more credits. But yeah, that's quite a fun like little way of being able to try some different gameplay techniques.
Because when I think of arena and like digital card games, I specifically think of like, you know, the mode where you spend money and then you get to create like a deck of drafted cards, and you have to pick between the cards to make your deck, and then you play like as many rounds as you can before you kind of lose a certain amount of time, and then depending on how many wins you get prizes, so like extra cards and whatever.
That's pretty much what it is, except that you don't like create a deck, so you just get what like it's just normal Star Realms where you have the base deck and then you can buy things. But though it's pretty much everything you said, except that instead of creating a deck, you get a different set of rules. So the one I played last week that I really enjoyed, the like altered rules were that the first ship that you buy goes straight into your hand, and the first base that you buy each turn goes into on the top of your deck. So it kind of makes you consider which cards you want to buy first, depending on what you might want to use straight away. And like it just makes you think about it quite differently. I played this week's one as well, but I can't remember what this week's rules are, but I can remember last week's. But yeah, it like changes the rules that you play. And obviously there's it also uses different decks. So I don't think you actually need to have the expansions for the decks to play those ones. So it kind of if you haven't spent money on like the expansions, it sometimes gives you like an idea of what's in them as well, which is quite good. But other than that, it's like you use credits, which usually you have to spend money on credits, but also it gives you one free entry into the arena, and then you can play as many games until you lose. But then after that, it's like 20 credits, which isn't, I don't think is a huge amount. But again, I don't really know the monetary value to credits. I don't remember. Yeah. I've bought it in a while because I keep just like earning enough credits to then re-enter things.
Yeah, like the closest thing I have to understanding how that works is I used to play Hearthstone a decent amount. So like Hearthstone is like a digital board like card game, but it's strictly just digital. There's not a physical equivalent. And I used to play Arena a decent amount, and that was similar in the sense that, you know, you could see cards and new cards that you didn't necessarily have in your collection that were part of expansions. So you could kind of see how they worked, but a lot of it was very luck based in the sense of you're entirely dependent on what you're drafting. Like you'll pick between 3 different cards each sort of like draft phase, and then it is depending on whether you have cards that kind of synergize with each other. But I remember having some decent runs, but also some really, really bad ones where I'd just lose like 3 times over and over. But now talking about this just makes me want to play Hearthstone. So I don't want to. That needs to stop.
This conversation must end.
Yeah, it's dangerous. Matt Jarvis, did you have anything to add to that? I saw you go to say something.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that like I've played a bit of Star Realms, but obviously not the same degree as Lolies. They're like different formats normally in Star Realms, or is it just kind of like you can play in a tournament, you can play like 1-on-1, and then there are those variants? It's not like Magic where there are loads of different, because I guess it's all deck building, so it just depends on the expansions.
Yeah, so it's mostly like the rule set is usually the same throughout, but then Arena is one of the ways where they change it. Also, they brought out on Kickstarter a couple of years ago like Star Realms Frontiers, which allows you to play co-op against like bosses. And I think they're bringing that onto the app, or have they already? I think they're bringing it onto the app. I don't think they've brought it onto the app yet. as far as I remember. But yeah, it's mostly just like the way the rule sets works that can change sometimes. But for the most part, it's like there's a basic way of playing, and that's like in tournaments, that's the way you will play. I don't think they do tournaments where they change the rule sets, as far as I'm aware.
Nice.
But yeah.
But yeah, and if you want to see Lolies playing Star Realms and decimating 5 people simultaneously, you're playing 5 simultaneous games.
Yeah, I think actually this is what I think got me back into Star Realms mostly was that stream last week where I played. At the end of the stream, I did like what I like to call a Queen's Gambit, where I played 5 people at once, and I did beat them all. Spoilers. It's funny because before that I was doing one-on-one games where I was like concentrating and I was losing. I was like 50% win rate, and then I played 5 people at once and I was like barely paying attention. Like, I was like talking and I was just clicking between games really quickly, and I managed to win them all somehow. Yeah, it's good. Good way to end.
Yeah, it was really good, and it reminded me that I never ever want to go up against you in Star Realms. I think you played like Johnny or Wheels like a long time back.
Wheels, yeah.
Yeah, who had never played, and you were, like seasoned veteran of Star Realms.
My win percentage is only 50%, which actually, according to Darwin, one of the creators of the games, 50 to 60 is like quite good in it.
I think
he said the top players are between 50 and 60%.
Yeah,
that's what you told me anyway.
Right, yeah. Nice. Anything else? Is that everything you've been playing?
I feel like there's probably something else, but I can't remember. But mostly Star Realms, yeah. That covers most of it.
Alex, Meehan, let's move over to you. What have you been playing this week?
Hey, I've been playing. So I played some Colt Express.
Nice.
It's a great game.
Yeah, which is a game I like very much. Although now I associate it with that intense burn I got from Johnny that one time in a video stream where I think they'd been asked, "Oh, what games do you think like people don't like enough and you really enjoy?" And I was like, "Oh, Colt Express." And Johnny was like, "Oh, that's not an obscure game." And I was like, "Oh."
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't. Maybe I'm just not in the right circle sometimes, but I hadn't heard a huge amount of people talk about Colt Express before. But hey, maybe it's more popular than I thought.
It's a pretty big title, yeah.
Loli's just kicking the knife there. Yeah, we played that on Board Game Arena. The Board Game Arena version is pretty good. Although it's a lot harder when you're playing a digital version of that game. It's a lot harder to pay attention to what people are playing.
I agree, yeah. I think it's harder to get, because the whole thing is that people play cards down, isn't it? And then you kind of have to like try and remember what they've played, but I find that as well, it's harder to do that on the app, because I think I don't know, I feel like playing online, it's just easier to like look away for a minute, or I don't know, it's just it's a very different experience.
Have you played the app version, like the dedicated app?
Nope.
Because that's pretty good. I think like it still has the same problem of like you feel a little bit detached from the people around the table. But I like the app version for what it's worth.
I should give it a look, because I do enjoy Colt Express. It's funny because I'm not someone who thinks in a way that really benefits Colt Express, in the sense that it is a programming game. Like, your brain is meant to work in a way where you can kind of think ahead to, okay, what have people, or like pay attention to what people have played, and then like make an action or like choose a card that you think is going to fit well, into that. And just like it's about like gathering all this information that's you're sort of getting, and putting your actions in where you think they're going to work. And like my brain's not very good at doing that sort of thing, but I still really enjoy playing Colt Express. I wonder if it's just because the theme is so good and it's not hugely complicated, really. Like, the main thing you've got to pay attention to is, like, what are people playing and what are your options, and kind of what are each round, what are the special rules of each round. But I didn't, I think I was third. Like, it definitely was a game where one person got a lot of stuff and the rest of us kind of had, like, what was left, the pickings. It was very chaotic, like, because I think there were 5 of us, or at least the max player count, I think. And that just means that it can be incredibly chaotic, because there's only so much, you can only predict what so many players are going to do. When there's more players, thrown into that mix, it does become a lot more like, I have no idea what might happen. And so the marshal was moving around constantly, shooting us up onto the roof. People were firing bullets everywhere. It was a lot of fun. And then we played a game called Terra Mystica. Are you aware of this game?
Yeah.
Boyo. There's a lot going on in that one.
It's quite a heavy one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to the group and I was like, I kind of fancy playing something, a bit chunkier and everything. And this one person was like, I can teach you Terra Mystica. And I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of this one, but I've not played it. And at that point, it was quite late in the evening, sort of. I don't think we realised how long it takes to play Terra Mystica, let alone when you know what you're doing. But yeah, it's just you're playing as different fantasy species, so like halflings, dwarfs, witches, stuff like that. And the general goal is getting victory points, but the way you get those is so different depending on the species you're playing, the kind of options you have available to you. You can terraform land to kind of fit with your favoured environment, so then you can build on it. But even that involves multiple steps to kind of do. It's not as simple as choose the terraform of this. It's how many space does it cost, and how many workers does it cost to do? How much stuff do you have? What can you actually do with it on this round? But on top of that, there's stuff like different religions or something with different cults. There's power that you can use to exchange to do other things. There's the different structures. There's just a lot going on in that game, and I kind of had a sort of awareness of what I was doing. But I think it's definitely one that you have to play multiple times to really understand what the hell is going on. So I do want to give it another go, because it's got some elements to it that I'm like, oh yeah, this sounds really cool. Like, I've been getting into a lot more games that have different elements to them, and like you have to learn how they all work to really do well. But oh boy, that one was just a lot. Terra Mystica is a lot, and I'm not sure I like all of it.
I think I always confuse Terra Mystica and Small World in my mind, because there's
very different games.
They're mechanically very different, but they are thematically like slightly adjacent in that you just play a fantasy species of some kind, and you are expanding from your kind of little place on the map. But I just always mix them up. But yeah, Terra Mystica it's a hefty old thing. Small World and Terra Mystica couldn't be more far apart in terms of mechanics, but thematically, although I'd say I'm not keen on the way Terra Mystica looks. I think the art style is very generic. Like, it is very much like, this is fantasy. Here is a halfling. Here is, I wasn't keen on the way it looked. I think Small World kind of has a bit more of a style to it. Like, it's got a bit more of a recognizable look. It's like slightly cartoony, right?
Yeah. And I think it plays around with things a lot more in terms of the different species, whereas Terra Mystica seems to take itself very seriously, even though a lot of the aspects of it are kind of a bit silly. Apparently the sort of semi-sequel follow-up Gaia project, right?
Yeah.
The sci-fi game is even more complicated.
Oh, lovely.
So, hey, maybe I'll move on to that if I ever get my brain around Terra Mystica. But Yeah, that's what I've been playing, Mr. Jarvis. How about you?
I've been playing something that we've all been playing, which is Burn Bryte. Which,
yeah.
as of this recording, we played it literally yesterday for a sponsor video, which will be up on the channel, I think, the day after this goes live, the Saturday, part 1. It's a 2-parter. So Burn Bryte is the Roll20 exclusive RPG, so you can only play it through Roll20, the online virtual tabletop thing. And it's a sci-fi RPG. It's got kind of an interesting dice mechanic in that you have your kind of typical RPG stats. They're kind of like broad categories. So you could be, for instance, suave while performing something, or you could use power, or you could like use a mental stat like knowledge or computers or something like that. And the complexity is the number of dice you roll. So it goes from 3 to 7. And you just roll that number of a certain polyhedral die. So depending on your stat, so it could be D4, which is the lowest, or it could be up to D12. I think that's the highest anyway.
Yeah.
And you basically roll that number of dice, and it doesn't really matter how high you roll. Well, it doesn't matter at all how high you roll. It only matters if you roll any doubles, because if you roll any doubles, you fail. But as long as you don't roll doubles, you pass. So with a D4, obviously, it's a much higher chance that you'll roll doubles if you're rolling like 2 or 3 dice. Whereas with a D10, if it's only complexity 3, the chances are much smaller. Which is like an interesting mechanic that I can't think of another RPG that uses quite the same mechanic. I'm sure that there are some that use similar kind of doubles things.
Yeah, I've never heard of that though. Like the doubles thing was the one that really stood out to me in terms of the uniqueness. Not necessarily using different types of die, because I've seen that in plenty of other games. Like Deadlands does that.
And Blades as well, right? Blades.
Yeah, I think
increase your die, I think.
Yeah,
is Blades
yeah.
just D6?
Blades does that, yeah.
Yeah. Which I think that mechanic was the most interesting, but I don't know whether it actually worked 100% that well, because it kind of felt like either our luck was terrible, or like the system seemed quite stacked against us in terms of, I don't know what the probabilities are like, but even when we were rolling quite high numbered die, like we were still failing more often, I'd say, than succeeding. And I don't know if that's because we were a low-level character and that's kind of what you expect. But also there's the sense that because there's so little in between area, it's just you pass or you fail. Like, there's very little room for, oh, you pass, but there are some complications. Or like, or you fail, but I'll give you this, as recompense for that.
Yeah, there were some moments of that, right? I think when one of us had advantage and we had to roll twice, I think Lolies, you got a partial success at one point.
Yeah.
So I think there is a framework in there for that. But yeah, it's kind of, it was interesting. I'm still kind of, I didn't not enjoy it. I think I certainly enjoyed it a lot more than other role-playing systems. But I think, the kind of like the binary yes or no outcome at points was like, it was just kind of interesting versus if you roll against like a scale of, okay, you're trying to hit an 11 but you roll a 10, that gives you there's some kind of like, okay, you almost got there, but
yeah, I think it's like it is the case of, it's simpler to kind of do, to get your head around, to get the result, and to move on into the next whatever you're doing. But it does mean that it's more limiting, I guess, in terms of, what your options are, or like what's possible. But I do think it was interesting. The world itself does not interest me at all. Like, I kind of felt like the setting was very like, like.
Yeah, I quite liked my Peacecraft.
Yeah, I liked my character.
I don't know. I've obviously, like, nothing is truly original, but I've seen a lot of that already, and there was, I don't know. To me, I wasn't that impressed by the world building. Like, it didn't interest me. Maybe because I didn't have a lot of time to kind of immerse myself in it, but like, it all sounded very
Yeah, it sounded like there was quite a lot of it from what Wills was saying, because Wills ran the session we were in, and I think because it was a relatively short session, so we were playing the kind of starter thing with pre-gen characters and a pre-gen adventure.
Yeah.
So it may be that we just didn't get into the depths of it. Like, I
don't know.
can't speak to it either way, but yeah, it's like there were like aspects of it that were like, yeah, okay, like this is sci-fi. As you kind of like, there's bug people, there's robot people, there's like cat people.
Yeah, like reading the bio for my character, like the species I was playing, I was just like, okay, like they're bug people. Like, I don't know. I think when you've got other science fiction worlds that again, they'll have species that are kind of inspired by stuff that we're familiar with, because that's, all humans can't just conjure something out of completely nowhere. But they at least seem to like develop them a lot more to make them seem more unique. Like for example, Mass Effect, the Solarians in Mass Effect, right? They're visually, they're kind of a bit reptilian or amphibian, and they are kind of energetic, and a lot of them lean towards scientific backgrounds. But that's still more interesting to me than these are just bug people. You know what I mean? Like, and they act like bugs. So I'm like, I feel like you could have maybe taken this a few more steps in another direction. Like, maybe take the bug thing and kind of run with it a bit more, rather than just bugs and robots that like peace. That's funny. I don't know. You're grinning. I don't know why.
No. Like, yeah, no. I can't disagree with you. Like, I think, like, I don't know enough to delve into it. It could be that all the lore that's there is just kind of like generic kind of stuff. But I like, for what it's worth, like, I enjoyed what we played. I don't know if that was because like we were making it fun, or like I had a good time with my Peacecraft robot.
I don't know, maybe you've played a more interesting character. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe they just picked like kind of iffy pre-gens. Like, because we didn't really delve into all the character options, so I'd be kind of interested to know whether there are those. Like, did they pick the more kind of familiar stuff for this adventure, or is it all kind of quite familiar? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hate my experience, Matt Jarvis. I'm not dunking on it. I'm just saying that I like some of what the system was doing. I do prefer that kind of system to something that's very complicated. It didn't take us very long to get our heads around what we were doing, which is good. But I just think the world building was very uninspiring.
There wasn't anything where I was like, I am like gonna go away and play loads more of this. It's just kind of. I was kind of surprised actually that the gameplay stuff was so simple, because like it's all built into Roll20, so they could have the most complicated system in the world and like show that it's one button in the interface. But actually, this is the kind of thing that you could run relatively easy on a tabletop anyway.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting, but I guess like nobody wants to trawl through a load of rules for a very complex thing. Sorry, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
Oh, no. I can't remember now.
But yeah, if you want to check that out, it should be up, as I say, on Saturday, part 1, and then part 2 will follow next week, I believe. If that's all we've been playing, let's move over to news. So quite a few bits this week. So Meehan, you wrote this quick one about just a little update to the new game from Matt Leacock of Pandemic fame.
Yeah. So I believe this game was initially kind of revealed earlier this year. And it was revealed as being called Climate Crisis in a New York Times article. But now it seems to have had a name change to Daybreak. So it's very odd. There's no obvious like comment made as to why the name has been changed. Maybe the name that the New York Times used in their article was a prototype name. That's kind of what I'm guessing. Maybe speculating what happened. But this new kind of name was revealed in a Polygon interview with Matt Leacock and co-creator Matteo Manapace. I hope I said that right. And yeah, not much more revealed about how the game actually plays. It still very much sounds like a version of Pandemic in the sense that it's a cart game. You're trying to prevent this terrible event from happening, and essentially trying to manage, like, in this case, carbon emissions, and trying to respond to different events that kind of pop up on a global scale. But it seems you play as like different groups of nations. So I think they mentioned like China and the US. And yeah, you can do things to kind of set the Earth up to kind of reduce carbon emissions. There's still no idea of when it's coming out, what it's going to cost. But I think the name was chosen as a kind of to instill a sense of positivity, at least amongst an otherwise kind of, scary concept of climate change and, the effects of that on society, on the planet. So I guess that's nice, and there's some artwork for it on the article.
Yeah, the artwork looks nice, and the publisher news is new as well, right? The I can't remember the name of them. CMYK.
CMYK, yeah.
Which I found kind of interesting because they're kind of best known for like Monikers and I think Wavelength, which are games that are very different, even from Pandemic. Pandemic is very kind of mainstream and accessible, but not in the same way that Wavelength and Monikers are these kind of big party games.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that is a sign of this being a lighter game. I don't know if this is a sign of that studio publisher moving into kind of heavier territory. It's interesting. I think like Climate Crisis, speaking of generic stuff, like, that is the most generic. But then Pandemic worked, Pandemic, one word.
It is what it says on the tin, right?
Yeah, basically, right? Yeah.
I mean, like, I think you're going to have a better idea of what you're getting from the name Climate Crisis than Daybreak.
Yeah,
Certainly.
Daybreak is... there a video game studio called Daybreak?
Daybreak rings a bell, yeah.
Yeah,
I think something called Daybreak.
It almost goes the other way in that it feels like it could be applicable to anything. Like Daybreak could be like a video game studio. Daybreak could be like the name of a band. Like
film, book, whatever. Like
but I don't mind. I don't mind it. It's fine. Like it's it's a bit better than Climate Crisis, at least. Like
I mean, it is less generic than Climate Crisis, but it's a lot less like, oh, okay, well, yeah, like the name Pandemic, you know exactly
that's true,
what you're getting into with that. Yeah, like Louis says, it says what it does on, it does what it, you know what I'm saying, but yeah, but Daybreak is a lot more sort of vague, but as for the publisher, like they've done some really good stuff in the past, like Monikers and Wavelength for both. I would say, obviously they're party games, but I would say they're at least something that's different. Do you know what I mean? Like both of those games I would associate with, like, these are something that I've not really seen before, and they have an element of quality to them. So I wonder whether that's just the kind of matchup that's happened here. Like maybe Leacock and Minipace were a fan of those games and reached out, or maybe it was the way round. But we shall have to wait and see.
Yeah, there's no release date for now, right? Like we have no idea when this is coming out. It's just kind of creeping out in these little bits of detail. Yeah,
it's funny. Like there are these feature pieces on it. And there's several, but they all very much focus much more on what's the message we're going for here, what's the kind of ethos behind this game, rather than what do you do in the game. So I guess because the big draw really is that it's a subject that's very in the here and now, like it's very much in our sort of eyes. if that
Yeah.
makes sense. I don't know what's happened to my brain today, or my mouth. I just can't seem to articulate things
Yeah.
properly.
But I'm interested in this. I think we said this before and you kind of brought it up there. Like, I'm mainly curious to see how different this is to Pandemic, because the little snippets we've got so far do kind of make it sound a bit like Pandemic.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm sure there'll be some variants, but it doesn't sound a million miles away in terms of moving around the board, you know, performing actions in spaces.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's not that different, because Pandemic works, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe there's more of a kind of desire to get the message out there and have a board game that kind of covers this sort of thing than trying to make a revolutionary design, which is interesting if it has been like that, because it's so often the case that when it comes to design, the mechanics come first and then the theme comes afterwards. So, but I would be surprised if this was completely the other way around. That, you know, I think Leacock has said that he's wanted to make a game based on this subject, and then it just happens that, hey, there's a really good, you know, blueprint for a game that can focus on topics like this already there. So
I would be curious as to why it's not, like, why the decision was made, whether it was on Leacock's end or on the publisher's end, not to bring something out for Z-Man, because Z-Man has done different variants of Pandemic, and even if this was under a different name, you know, you could potentially see it. So maybe that is a sign that it is actually quite distinct, and it just wouldn't fit into that series. And so it was time to go with a different publisher. So
yeah, exactly.
It's all speculation for now, but I'm curious to see it. Pandemic, you know, just remains one of those kind of modern classics in so many ways. Like, it's still a brilliant like design.
Yeah. I think there's an easy danger of being exhausted by Pandemic as a series, because there is just so much of it. Like, not even counting the main game and then, you know, the Legacy series, there are a lot of spin-offs and expansions for that game. That it's easy, to kind of be like, God, like, more Pandemic, huh? It is a successful franchise, I guess. So they milking it.
Yeah, maybe that was their thought. It's like, let's just break apart, like, break off from that Leacock.
Maybe
on Leacock's end, but
maybe they're tired of it.
Speaking of Pandemic, actually, Will's co-op games list is up on the YouTube channel, and I wrote about 3 of the better Pandemics in the series. If you are kind of tired of them, and none of them are original Pandemics, so they're all quite different.
Nice.
So little self plug there, but, you know, like, I am a big fan of that series. I think I've played most of them, and like, some of them lean a little bit more into this is Pandemic, you know, with this tiny change, but they've done some interesting stuff. I think Rapid Response particularly is one of those kind of weird, kind of came out of nowhere, this, like, real time dice rolling game that's really stressful. But it's a really good game.
Didn't even think of the recent spin-off series that they've put out, the quick version of Pandemic.
Oh yeah, Hot Zone, is it called?
Hot Zone, yeah. Hot Zone, yeah. God, I completely forgot about that one, but I do think it's got a really.
That's a good one. I like that one. Sorry.
Yeah, I've not played it. I do think Pandemic has a really strong foundation, and that's why they've been able to you know, make so many spin-off games and different series. But I mean, I've not played most of them, so I can't really talk. But it sounds like Matt Jarvis likes a fair few, so I trust your judgment.
Speak of me like I'm not here. I hear.
I've heard.
Speaking of
Ton, that a certain Master Jarvis has played Pandemic.
Speaking of modern classics, though, that a lot of people like, there's a new Seven Wonders on the way. It seems we don't really know, right?
It's a
mystery.
Yeah. Seven Wonders is a mystery. Sometimes you just gotta ride it. That didn't make any sense. There's apparently a new Seven Wonders game coming out, called Seven Wonders Mystery. So the clue is in the title. And literally the only thing we know about it is from a trailer that was released last week. That's entirely just, the theme is Seven Wonders. And that's about all you get from it. It literally, there are some people playing Seven Wonders. They get sucked into the box like a Jumanji. And then they're in the world of Seven Wonders, I guess. But apart from that, we know very little. We have reached out to Days of Wonder. Days of Wonder?
Yeah, Repos.
Repos. Why did I think Days of Wonder? Because it's called Seven Wonders. What is wrong with me today? Repos. Yeah, we did reach out to them about, hey, what's going on with this thing? And we haven't really heard anything back. We just have to wait till April the 26th.
Which is next Monday, I think.
6
Indeed
days.
it is.
Yes, yeah.
Or
It's next Monday. Yes.
So presumably we'll find out then what this is. I mean, it seems like, I mean, I'm inferring a lot from that trailer, but it seems like this would be a lot of hype if it were just another expansion, because I think, you know, they've had a couple of they've had a few expansions for Seven Wonders. They've done that. I think the most recent one didn't come out that long ago. So I feel like if it turns out to just be a kind of another expansion for original Seven Wonders, or even Seven Wonders Duel, it would kind of be a bit of a letdown. But
from what I can tell, it looks like an entirely. It looks like they've almost made like an exit game, kind of like a.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Escape room kind of thing. Yeah.
I would not be surprised if that's the direction they're going with this, with some form of adventure style game or escape room game. That was the vibe I was getting from the trailer as well. But don't want to speculate too much, you know.
I do.
Reporting.
I'll speculate for you.
I would, I'd play a Seven Wonders escape room game. Like, I think that's
I wonder how it ties into Seven Wonders. Is it just is there 7 different mysteries in the box and they're like all in the Seven Wonders of the world or something set there?
Yeah, maybe it's like this time you're trapped inside the pyramid. This time you're trapped inside the Gardens of Babylon.
You don't want to be trapped inside the statue of Zeus. No. Like, I wouldn't be, because me and Zeus don't really get along.
All right. We'll find out more about that next week, presumably, and maybe we'll chat about it on next week's podcast. Or if it's a load of nothing, we'll probably just ignore it.
Yeah, depends how interesting it actually is.
Nothing.
Here's one on a kind of different note. A board game Atlas, which I'm not super familiar with it. I kind of discovered it through this story. But it's kind of like it's a price comparison site. It, I think, has some forums. It lets you use.
Of course, it has some forums, Matt Jarvis.
Yeah. But it's launching something that is best described, I guess, as like Metacritic for board games. So for folks who aren't familiar, Metacritic is kind of, I guess, it's biggest in the world of video games, where it takes critic reviews and kind of aggregates them into one score out of 100.
Yeah.
So it's like it serves as like a Rotten Tomatoes-esque way of looking at a game and going, okay, this scored on average 86.
And then it gives a green light to angry people.
There are many issues with Metacritic.
To then do bad things.
But there doesn't currently exist something like that for board games, at least that I'm aware of, and at least this press release made out. Because they're very much like, we're the first one of these, we're doing it first. So Board Game Atlas is expanding its reviews feature to feature critic reviews and to give them an aggregated score. So at the moment it already has user reviews, so you can go on there, you can look at a game, it will like tell you all the latest deals, it will tell you the price comparison, and it also has like a rating out of 5 stars that users have given it, and I think users can write short text reviews. Not dissimilar to something like Amazon or kind of your normal retail sites. But what they're launching is they're going to allow critics to sign up. They describe it as being hand-selected critics. But they have opened submissions. So I think they've said they have some key partners, but they're also going to consider others. They have kind of eligibility status, but it's not... You don't have to be the biggest of the big kind of outlets. I think if you're website, you need something like 4,000 followers on social media. But they're also allowing YouTube channels and podcasts and even TikTok accounts, I think, is something that they list, as well as print magazines. But the short of this is that they're going to make available this kind of review aggregate of critic scores, which is an interesting thing, which is why I pulled it for this news section, because board game reviews are very different to video game reviews in that a lot of the time there aren't loads of major critical outlets. There's obviously, there's places like us, there's Polygon, there's, Shut Up and Sit Down, Dice Tower, those kind of like bigger outlets. And then there are a lot of kind of much smaller outlets, like either individuals or just kind of like smaller websites or just Twitter accounts, TikTok accounts that do very short kind of coverage. But the thing with board games, at least in my mind, is that often the investment, like partly because of the industry, partly because there aren't loads of professional outlets. So a lot of folks are doing this in their free time. A lot of the time, board games require the investment to kind of care about a game before you write up a review about it. So often you'll see that a lot of reviews for board games are generally positive. And if a game doesn't have as many critical reviews, it's typically because it's not worth pouring a load of time into only to give it a negative score. So this idea of kind of aggregating critic reviews is an interesting one to me, because I'm curious to see whether it skews very heavily towards the positive end, simply because people invest time in things that they like. The industry tends to write recommendations rather than reviews. It tends to be, I really like this game, here's why you should play it, rather than should you play this game.
Yeah. I think it's only the case of it if it's a really big series, name, IP, something like that. Then you'll probably have more outlets covering it. But yeah, I do agree with you in the sense that a lot of the time it feels like the coverage is very much, we already like this game, but we're just going to tell you why we like it, because we know you're going to be looking for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that a lot of outlets just don't give scores anymore, both in video games and in board games. Like we don't give scores. I don't think Shut Up and Sit Down give scores. Like people give badges and recommendations, but you don't have a scale out of 10 or even out of 5. Because that's one of the many problems with Metacritic, is that converting like a 5-star rating from a site that gives 5 stars into a 100-point scale, which is Metacritic's default and is what's now being used on Board Game Atlas. It makes it very kind of, what's the difference between like a 65 and a 60? Because a 60 is 3-star and a 65 is, like 3 1/4 stars. And if you get even more granular than that, like, back in the olden days of video games, I think some IGN still might do it. They give a rating out of like 10, but on a decimal scale as well. So you can have like a 10.9, an 8.9, or you can have a 7.4. I think PC Gamer does it out of 100 still, which to me seems just kind of mind-boggling. Like, what's an 83 versus an 84? I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of outlets have moved away from scores, and also because like boiling something down to this is 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean?
Yeah,
like, what's a 7 out of 10 for an indie game versus a 7 out of 10 for a big blockbuster? Sorry,
exactly. Mate. Yeah, I also think, as particularly with the example of video games, that I think a lot of people are getting sick of audiences kind of looking at those scores, that fundamentally, for example, an 8 out of 10 is pretty good. Like that's a lot closer to a 10 than it is a 0. And yet that will still, in some people's eyes, look like a negative score, because anything below a 9 is like, you hate this game. And I think a lot of sites have gotten sick of audiences looking at that and then using it as a reason to complain or just even, hurl abuse at reviewers or sites or whoever disagrees with them. I mean, that will always happen, but I think not having that numbers thing because a lot of people will just look at the number and then instantly react to that without actually reading the text as to why that score was chosen. I think getting rid of that, to me, is just a beneficial thing, because it means that you're actually gonna read the review and you're gonna get a much more nuanced idea of why they think what they think. And I think that's even more important with tabletop games, because it's so... Are they only doing board games, I'm guessing?
I think that, like, obviously they're Board Game Atlas, so I think the onus is on that, but I think they do feature, like, tabletop role-playing games on there.
Okay.
But probably more the ones that you can find on mainstream retail sites, because they're largely a price comparison site.
Yeah. But I think, especially with even board games, not even counting, all the other types of games in tabletop gaming as a banner, I think even board games can be so different, just entirely dependent on the genre, the player count, the theme. And I think comparing them based on a score, like, I think they do that on Board Game Geek as well. I think that's entirely a community-led thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who decides that this is this score, really? Like, I think a lot of the time it just comes from people just being in agreement with one another. Like, there's a reason why there are certain games that are considered in, again, the Board Game Geek community to just remain at the top, because they're the ones that people only really want to talk about, because they're the ones that are considered to be, worthy of being, talked about, listened about, whatever. And it means that a lot of the other things that might be rolling along that maybe people aren't aware of are just not going to have any notice paid to them.
Yeah, and Board Game Geek, you very rarely see something below like a 6.5. So in some ways it becomes this, again, it's just a weird skewed scale of, if something's under a 7, normally it's got a load of bad reviews. And I think user reviews are a tricky thing, because you see people react to things that aren't the game in terms of reviews, like review bombing, right? It happens on Steam, it happens on Board Game Geek. You'll see people give something a load of flat zeros because they're unhappy with the Kickstarter, or they're unhappy with
their shipping, their shipping was delayed, or
like outside factors, and like those obviously can contribute to not wanting to buy a game, or reasons you shouldn't buy a game. But in terms of judging a game in and of itself, it becomes a very tricky thing. And then you see people giving something 10s and putting messages like to counteract the zeros. So it just becomes this impossible shifting balance that never quite works out.
Or they'll give like top scores to a game that fundamentally has issues with it. Like, even games that I really enjoy, like Scythe, for example, I wouldn't give that like a 10 because there are issues with that game. But again, I think that just goes to show that outright number scoring is not a very good way of assessing, at least tabletop games. I just think it's not. Yeah, it boils something very complex down to just a number.
Yeah. It's a tricky bit. Like, I can see why someone would want to launch something like this, because in terms of, on paper, it is a very accessible, nice thing to look at something and go, oh, okay, this is a game that I should consider because it's got the box is green, right? It's like, oh, I should look further into this. But I think it does become then a troublesome kind of territory in terms of people backlashing against things, like converting things into scores when they're not scores to begin with, and also instilling bad practices. You see it in the video game industry. There have been alleged accounts of developers not being given bonuses and other
just
employees
of
studios.
Metacritic scores,
their financial kind of stuff being withheld because of Metacritic scores.
Yeah, I don't see that becoming a problem, because honestly, I wonder whether they're even going to get enough reviews to really have much use of this function. It depends on how far-reaching they are with where they're taking reviews from, because the tabletop gaming industry still isn't a huge amount of coverage there, at least compared to the video game industry. So I wonder if there's just going to be a few games this year, for example, that get scores, and maybe maybe a sprinkling of others. But yeah, I can see why they want to do it, but I don't really think it's necessary. Like, I think if people want to get a good idea of whether a game is good or not, as much as we've spent the last 10 minutes complaining about what the community can do, they can also give a really good idea of whether a game is worth playing, because a lot of people who are passionate about tabletop gaming do want to let people know whether something is genuinely good or not. I think you can find that in forums or on even on like Reddit or Amazon reviews, stuff like that. I do think the community is a double-edged sword, for the most part, though. I think they are a positive force, even if they're often overly positive about games.
Yeah, it's a complex thing. There's no perfect answer, I think. Like you say, sometimes it's a case of seeking out the community. Sometimes it's a case of seeking out influencers or critics that you find your personal tastes align with as well. Because that's the thing, is a board game can be great with a certain group and terrible with another group.
Yeah.
Depending on the people around the table with you as well. I've played games with certain groups who just didn't gel with it.
Yeah.
And then played them with another group and it's just all clicked and come together. And that's a really hard thing to judge and to encapsulate in a review. So yeah, it's a very complicated thing. I'm curious to see what happens with this. Like you say, it might just kind of sputter along because there aren't enough reviews to kind of properly give an overview on the same level as Metacritic with video games or music or films. So yeah, we'll see. It's an interesting maybe sign of the times though that board games are getting to this point.
Yeah.
We are running short on time for the news, so let's whiz through these next three. Yes, three.
I mean, yeah, a lot of, I'd say, two of these I can wrap up very quickly myself.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, tell us about A Gentle Rain.
This is a board game that was announced this week. It's coming from the co-designer of Arkham Horror, Kevin Wilson, but it has a very different kind of approach in this case.
It couldn't be further from Arkham Horror.
Yeah, couldn't be further from Arkham Horror in terms of theme. Yeah, Gentle Rain is as much as it has a theme, it's about making water lilies on a lake, and it seems to be a very solo or small co-op driven experience in a little box. You lay tiles down and you try to match tiles to make water lilies and see whether you can get all 8 types of lily before you run out of tiles, and that's literally it. It's small, it's simple. You can get it for $22, which is £15 from Mondo Games at the moment. They create Unmatched. They're probably best known for the Unmatched series. There you go, that's A Gentle Rain.
Yeah.
The other game I'll quickly whiz through is from Exploding Kittens, that studio that we all love.
Yay.
They're at it again. This one actually sounds not bad. I think Matt and I were saying actually sounds like a game that might be worth playing. It's called A Little Wordy, and it's a 2-player game, and it's essentially a mixture of a word game and a deduction game. So you both have a selection of random letter tiles, and you both have to make a secret word from those tiles. And then you swap the tiles with your opponent, and they have to guess what they think your word is. Using that collection of tiles as well as some clue cards that kind of can give them more information, but in exchange for less points at the end. And then whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. So it's actually got more mechanics than just play these cards and they do wacky things. Which is
throw
a lot of...
a burrito at people.
Yeah, throw a burrito at someone, which is a lot of what Exploding Kittens does. So at least in terms mechanically, it's more mechanically detailed than we see from Exploding Kittens a lot of the time. So it's just available to get right now from their website. At £12 or about $15.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm all for interesting word games.
Yeah. It sounds fun and simple, and there are actually mechanics there, and obviously the artwork is from the Oatmeal people like that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Cool. The last one I'll give a little shout out to, which was spotted by Chase, is the Bristol's Children's Hospital Play team. It was released a couple of Dungeons and Dragons 5e supplements in order to fundraise. So the supplements kind of cover disability, bring disability representation to the game. They were co-created with D&D Disability, along with the Bristol Children's Hospital Play team member Isaac Cook. There's quite a lot of words in that title. So yeah, you can get them for free, but they're essentially running, I think, a GoFundMe to get fundraising, and they say that they will use the funds for learning support and relief for young patients undergoing surgery or prolonged care, obviously in the children's hospital, and the supplements themselves bring together, I think there are some NPCs in there. I think Sarah Thompson's combat wheelchair may also be included as well.
Yeah, there's some
so I
lovely
think
artwork
there's a collection of stuff. Yeah,
there that's really gorgeous. Very wholesome, nice wholesome story.
Yeah, D&D being used for good.
Yeah.
So yeah, go and check them out, and obviously donate if you can, because it's a good cause. But if you're a little, short of money at the moment, you can go and check them out and just use them to bring some representation to your game in the meantime. Anyway. So there we go. Let's move on to emails.
Email.
Nice.
You were waiting for that, weren't you?
If you've got an email
He's
for
wising
a
up.
Dicebreaker
This
podcast,
is the problem. He's wising up.
you can email us at podcast@dicebreaker.com. I now leave the
Email.
gap because I know it's coming. But, Lolies, would you like to read this one?
He doesn't know when I'm coming, though.
From Patrick, please.
Patrick says, "What game was weighed more than you expected after looking at the box? My copy of Bullet Heart arrived yesterday, and I was surprised at how heavy the box was." I was just thinking about this because actually I had to, I'm moving soon, so I went to my friend's house because just before the first lockdown, the few weeks kind of running up to that, I was at his house like every week mostly playing Gloomhaven, but just like playing tabletop games in general. And I brought a game with me one time to play. And I remember I was there and I was like, oh, like we didn't get around to playing it. And I was like, I'll leave it here, we'll play it next time. And I never returned because the following week was like lockdown, and my game has been there ever since. And it's Flamme Rouge. It's a fantastic game that I've really missed having for the last year. But yeah, because I'm moving, I was like, I'm gonna go get my game because I'm moving like far enough away that it'll be hard for me to get it once I've moved. And it's a pretty big box anyway, Flamme Rouge. So you wouldn't necessarily be like massively surprised, but I think the size of the box, when you think about board games in general, a lot of games come in boxes that size and aren't necessarily very heavy because either they're just filled with a lot of air, or they're mostly cards, or I don't know, like things like that. With Flamme Rouge, because of a lot of it is like cardboard bits that make the kind of race course, is actually quite heavy. I remember like getting it from him and being like, oh wow, this is heavy, and like, like almost like falling forward a little bit when I took it off him. So that's just like one that was fresh in my mind because that was literally like at the weekend where I went to collect it and was surprised by how heavy it was because I hadn't remembered it being so heavy. Yeah, that's one that I've got fresh.
Nice. Yeah, I will. I've mentioned this
Email!
a couple times before. But Container, which I'm going to bring up again, which is a game that almost nobody has played or heard of.
Oh, we've talked about this before, yeah.
Yeah,
we've
it's
heard
a
of it.
game
Don't worry.
where you.
We've heard of it.
It's a really interesting game where you move shipping containers around, you make them, then you ship them to other players. It's got like a closed economy, so you're depending on other players to want to buy what you're making. But the main thing is it comes in like a normal kind of standard size box, and you look at it and think, okay, like I kind of know what that should weigh, judging by like you say, Lolies, like other games. And then you pick it up, and it is one of the heaviest games I've ever picked up because the ships are about this long. They're like, so what's that? I don't know, like 8 inches long?
20 centimeters.
Yeah, that'll do. Yeah, about 20 centimeters. And they are made of like solid resin, I think. So, and there are like 8 of them in there. And like everything else is just kind of cardboard. I think like it's not the best looking game, but you have these like solid resin ships. Oh, and then you have the shipping containers, which are also like solid resin little rectangles, rectangular things. What's a 3D rectangle called?
A cube.
No, that's a square.
A pyramid.
I
Rectangle.
don't
Hold
know
on.
where I'm going with this,
Rectangle.
yeah. Whatever a 3D rectangle is
Rectangular
called.
prism.
Like, that'll do, yeah. Oh, gosh, it's one of those days, isn't it? Anyway, there's like 100 or something shipping containers. And they're all resin. So you've just got like a massive amount of solid resin in this box. So it's just unbelievably heavy.
So Matt Jarvis, would you say it's heavy in weight in all aspects?
Sure, yeah. For the sake of your gag here, yes, it's as heavy to play as it is to pick up.
Hey.
There's
Meehan.
Yeah, go on.
No, Lolies, you go.
I was just gonna say there's another one that I was just thinking of. Like, you know, when you look at Gloomhaven, like OG Gloomhaven, you see the box and you expect that to be heavy because it's a big, big box.
Yeah, it's a big.
But when we received Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, it's like half the size, and I didn't expect it to be as heavy as it was. I don't know why. I just kind of thought it would be not as heavy, but it was like very heavy. Especially because that one it's a thick boy, but it's not like a very big boy.
It's a thick, short boy.
Yeah, it is.
And
heavy.
Lion. Yeah. Whereas like Gloomhaven is like Gloomhaven is like the mountain. Whereas Jaws of the Lion is like, I don't know.
It's like who's the princess of that one? The tall one, the tall lady.
The tall lady.
Yeah, what's her name again?
I don't know.
She's not a princess. Is she a princess? Lady. The tall blonde lady from Game of Thrones. I'm trying to go with your analogy. No, the tall one.
Cersei.
Brienne of Tarth.
Oh,
yes.
Brienne of Tarth.
I thought you were like at one point referring to like Lady Dimitrescu. The Resident Evil Step On Me lady.
No, I wouldn't know that.
That's a completely different thing. Sorry, you said blonde lady. And I was like, there are several of those in that
tallest
series.
one.
Yeah, Brienne. Okay, yeah, like Jaws of the Lion is Brienne. There you go.
Yeah.
That's an excellent metaphor that definitely worked out.
Perfect. Very smooth as well.
Yeah, no one noticed. Yeah, I don't know. Forbidden Desert. Like whenever there's a box that's like a tin box, obviously it always feels like it's got more heft to it because it's in a tin box. So even though Forbidden Desert isn't that big a game, there's not a huge amount in it. It does just feel like more solid because it's not made of cardboard. So what is it, Lolies?
There's an Oink game.
Oink?
Yeah, you know the company Oink who makes those really, really tiny games. So like for anyone who doesn't know, they make these tiny games that are like, they almost fit in your pocket. They're so small. I know they've got one game and it's called Kobayakawa. It's really heavy because it's got loads of metal coins in it. Which like and I remember like picking it up and being like, oh my god, what is in this?
Yeah, I was trying to think of something with metal coins, but I think often like the metal coins like don't add that much heft, right, to games that they're in.
Yeah, but this is like the entire game
because
is
it's
metal
so
coins.
small.
Yeah, that game is like Gimli. Like really quite small, but
packed full of metal coins.
Packed full of metal packed full of strength to fell enemies with and to flirt with Legolas with.
That's a natural sprinter.
Low to the ground, yeah.
Alex, Meehan, would you like to read this one from Keegan EXE?
Yeah, I can do that.
Do you know what if it's Keegan X?
I think their Twitter username was like .exe.
I'm sure we can resolve this conflict.
Would you like to read this one from Keegan?
That was the question from them.
Yes.
What is my name?
Sounds like something like an old tree would ask you. Like a riddle. Pray, what is my name, and I will let you pass. No, they ask, if Matt Jarvis would move his cursor, what are some trends you see that you like, you don't like, I would just like to see in general.
The
Have we
shade.
answered this one before, or is it just a similar one we've gotten?
I don't know. You might have answered it on the week I was off, but I looked through and I couldn't see it on there. But anyway, we're here now. We've read
We're
it.
here now.
Trends that you want to see or don't want to see. I want to
like-
see. Oh,
Also-
Lolies,
All
you
I
go.
want to say is I like the trend. I don't know if it's a trend. I hope it's not a trend. Does a trend mean that it's gonna like die off at some point?
Potentially.
I don't know.
Okay, well, I would like this not to be a trend, and I would like to see more of this. Is more games that cater to like disabilities and stuff. Like we were just talking about, like that D&D 5e kind of extra things that they're doing. I know there was like that wheelchair. Were those minis or were they? No, they were stats,
Yeah,
weren't they, for
they're on-
adding.
Yeah, Hero Forge. Is it Hero Forge?
Oh, yeah, you're right. There's minis as well.
Hero Forge are offering
There's
those.
also this is not really a tabletop game, I guess, but there's like an escape room in London where it's like caters for the visually impaired, which is I really wanted to go, but I think I only found out about it just before lockdown as well, so I never really got to go. But things like that in board games, I think I would like to see more of, and I hope. I don't like to use the word trend because it makes me think that it's gonna die off. It's something that I guess is trending, and I'd like it to keep trending and just
Yeah.
Be a
become like almost a
solid-
norm.
a solid part of the
Yeah.
industry, please.
Yeah, more accessibility, always a good thing. Like visible and non-visible disabilities.
Yes.
That's like Nyctophobia, I think, was designed
Yeah,
by
I wanna
Catherine
play that
Stipple,
so bad.
for her uncle who is blind. So it was designed as a game that you can
Oh.
play
Yeah,
I
it's
if
didn't
you're
realise
blind,
that.
but also comes with blindfolds
Yes.
for those who are not blind.
I didn't realize
so,
that
yeah.
was a story behind that. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely, 100%.
yeah. And that game was part of the sale that was happening from Pandasaurus.
Yeah.
was
Although I saw
like-
that the shipping to the
Yeah,
UK is
I was
quite
like-
something.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get Nyctophobia, and I also get I think I put Pass Tally on there as well. I was like, oh, they're so cheap, and I looked at the shipping, and it was like $100 or something like that, and I was like, no.
Yeah, because the games were down to like $6 each. It was like a real. I don't know if they were just clearing out. It was really something. But
Yeah, that was a devastating moment for me last week. So yeah, you can cry for me. It's fine.
yeah, I think generally more games that like don't come with minis, like are just more compact, like don't have more than they need to have in there, and are accessible in terms of rules. Like not everything needs to be something you need to sit down and dedicate
Yeah,
2 to
that's
3 hours to.
That's a trend that you don't want to see more of, Matt Jarvis.
Yeah, just
it is
like
a trend at the moment.
fewer minis. Like find other ways. Like plastic is not the best for the environment anyway. Like there are other ways to do interesting things that replace miniatures on the tabletop.
Yeah. For me, I have a fair few trends that I've been seeing and I want more of. So, for example, what Jaws of the Lion did, I think it's really cool. So the fact that it's taken something like Gloomhaven, like a big ass chonk game with a lot going on there, takes forever to set up, not so accessible, and just offering like a more accessible version of that for people to, give a go. It's cheaper. It takes less time to set up, especially with the book thing. I think that's really cool. I want to see games to do more of that. My goodness, what was that game called, Matt Jarvis? Was it Through the Something Road? Oh, there's a game that you can also play in a book.
I mean, there's like Above and Below and Stuff Fables.
Yeah,
And Forgotten Waters does it.
there was a more recent one.
Oh, is this the Scott Elms thing?
Maybe, yeah.
Hold on, I will search
This
one
is so-
dicebreaker.com.
Good to listen to. Just us going, what was that thing called? I'm sure we'll remember it at some point and be like, damn, I wish I'd said that. But more games that provide a more accessible version of something enormous. So obviously we're seeing a lot of these games coming out, like Matt said, that have a lot of miniatures in them, a lot of stuff, a lot of mechanics. They're very like content heavy, which is wonderful. But then like just providing a more like digestible version of that for people who maybe are a bit intimidated by something like Gloomhaven, but they've heard of it and they want a similar kind of experience. And I mean, like games like Gloomhaven itself, it's also a sort of trend that we're seeing, which are like role-playing light games, where they provide a kind of similar experience to a role-playing game in the sense that there is a story, you have characters with stats and things, and you, in the case of Gloomhaven, you don't roll dice, but like you have abilities and stuff like that. And I think that's a really good thing that we're seeing as well, because some people don't want to play an RPG because they're either intimidated, they don't have time to do a campaign, or they just want to have something with a board and pieces. And I think games, like Gloomhaven, like I think we talked about Eldritch Horror in the past, and the kind of stuff that Arkham Horror does, where it provides, or like Forgotten Waters, where it provides an RPG-like experience, but on a board, and a lot more, again, accessible. I want to see more games that do fun things with like the physical space. So dexterity games particularly are an excellent version of that. You know, games that are willing to play around with components and how they work in a... You know, again, I don't want to harp on about like certain genres of games that we've seen a lot of, and I'm kind of not that into Euro games, but I do want to see more games that take the unique element that tabletop gaming has, physical pieces, and roll with it a lot more, and provide us with something we might not have seen before that we can have fun with.
Almanac the Dragon Road is
that
the
was
game
the
you're thinking
one. Almanac the Dragon Road. I was like, oh, this looks interesting. You play it in a book. That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I'll read this one from Oliver Gerlach. Meeples. What shape is best and why? For my money, it's the pig in Carcassonne, which is a lovely little round wooden delight. I'm going to admit something straight up here. I don't really like meeples.
What?
I don't think they're that... Like, they're fine. They do a job. They look like people. But I have this weird kind of base dislike of the
element
meeple
of wood.
kind of like obsession. Like, I hate the plays on words of meeples in like cafes and shops. Sorry, cafes and shops with the word meeple in. I don't particularly care for them in board games. Like, they're fine. They serve the same purpose as any other piece. But there's something that I just don't like. I don't get it. Like, I've never loved the idea of meeples. Like, I like Carcassonne. Like, Carcassonne's a great game. Like, they do a good job there. But I've never been like, oh, good, a game has meeples.
I'm really upset with you.
Yeah, Matt.
That's fine. I can take it.
I have one thing to say to you. Camel up, camel up, camel up, camel up, camel
yeah,
up.
but they're not.
Camel up.
They are.
They are.
Okay.
They are.
Okay.
They
I don't
are.
like
I'm
human
sorry,
shaped
if the
meeples.
pig-
I'll take cameeples.
If the pig can be a meeple, then the camel can be a meeple.
Okay.
And
Maybe I
those
just don't like the
meeples-
human shape. I don't like the ones that look like
Yeah,
the
they're
old,
boring.
like Rice Krispie
Like a little
Nutri-Grain.
star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't like those. I mean, I'm fairly indifferent to them. I do think that the community has an obsession with them, and I don't know why.
I like the meeple, the people meeple, when it comes
People
to what is the name of that game where they're little builders and they wear hard hats?
Men at
Oh,
work.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
no,
you
they're
can give
good.
them little hard hats and they're
Yeah.
adorable. And they hold planks and stuff.
Yeah, they serve more of a purpose though than like just being stuck on a board to represent something, right? So
Those
I
are one
guess
of my
that's why.
favorite like people meeple. But
Yeah.
I also really there was a game that I played before. I don't remember, did I even play it or did I just see this in a picture? I'm pretty sure I played this. Where you put the meeples on a little horse. And a little horse meeple. And it's like a little horse meeple and a little people meeple and they just ran around.
Yeah.
I guess like Flick 'em Up. Flick 'em Up has meeples technically, right? And they wear little hats.
Yeah,
quite
that's fun. See, I think we're talking you out of your...
Yeah, I think let me
Your
walk
aggressive stance.
back my statement.
Yeah, come
I
on.
don't like the little star-shaped people meeples,
Yeah,
and I
they're
don't
boring.
like the I don't
Unless
like the
they wear
play on
hats.
word of meeples. I think I don't like the word meeple because meeple should be plural, but it gets then used as a singular because, like, a meeple would be a merson, right? Like many meeple.
No,
one
because it's a
merson.
made-up word, so
Yeah.
you can.
But
it's like
based
sheep.
off of
No, yeah, it's based on that, but
Sheeple.
it's still its own word. Sheeple, I think, is actually a thing. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, sheep meeple is they call it
Sheeple,
sheeple. Yeah.
That's what I think of all you meeple
Whoa!
apologists. You're all sheeple meeples.
All
Meeple
you-
sheeples.
All you meeple apologists. Well, there you go. Now you know how Matt Jarvis feels about that.
No, it's fine. If you like meeples, that's fine. If you like
Yeah,
putting the word meeple in. This is my own personal views. I'm not going to begrudge anyone for liking meeples. I'm obviously playing out. But I think the camel meeples is a great shout because they serve a great gameplay purpose because they run the wrong
They're
way
very
and they carry
funny.
stuff on them.
They fit very well on top of one another.
Yeah.
They're excellently shaped.
I love
trying to
the
think
word
if-
meeple. I think it's a really fun word to say. And
Keep saying it. I want to see
feel-
his face get more
I
and more
feel
scrunched
sad.
up.
I feel sad for you, Matt, that you don't have this joy in that word. It's just such a fun word to say. Meeple?
Such a Scrooge. You're such a Scrooge, Matt.
You're a meeple Scrooge.
It sounds like the name of a Muppet or like the noise a Muppet makes, like Beaker.
Meeple.
Like if you were to describe the noise of Beaker from the Muppets, it would be
Yeah.
meeple, right?
He
'Cause
does, he does meep.
Yeah. I genuinely can't think of any other meeples or pieces that do the same kind of thing as Camelot, where you stack them or. Oh, I tell you what.
There's that circus.
What was
one,
the
right?
circus game? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
I
that was quite fun.
I have no idea what you're talking
Meeple
about.
Circus. It's
Meeple,
called.
Meeple Circus, right? I just blanked out the first half because I was so affronted by the
That
idea of
one's
it
got
being
like
in there.
a little elephant meeple, an ella
Yeah.
meeple, if you will,
Yeah,
Oh.
Ella Meeple.
and a horse meeple.
We're inventing our own language here.
A meeple
heeple.
kill. A mumma meeple.
Right.
Oh, this one, the circus ones have little faces on them. Oh, this is not a good time.
Oh,
They've got
dear.
like proper little, like they've like filled in so that they have like the limbs and the face. Oh no, that's not good.
Yeah, I think when you start putting faces on them,
Yeah.
because the proportions are not
No.
human proportions, so they start to look a little bit
Uncanny Valley.
odd. Yeah.
Although I have a meeple of that I bought at UK Games Expo a few years ago, and I bought it because it's a little blonde meeple that's wearing a dirndl, and I was like, it's me.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right. Thanks for your question, Oliver.
Hmm.
Lolies, would you like to read this one from Chris Longhurst?
I guess so. Chris Longhurst asks, what's the single most obscure game you've played? If anyone else on the cast has heard of it, you lose. Okay. I've got a game in my head. The problem is that I might have already mentioned it to you, and I don't know if I have or not. It's a game called Sequoia.
It doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. It's a 2-player game. It's all about bluffing, and it's the ultimate mind melt game where you've got a tiny little board, and it's got almost like a grid, but it's not really a grid. It's like loads of dots on the board, and you have a little golden ring, and you place that randomly on the board, and then you've got these different color pieces, and each player has cards which correspond to the color pieces on the board, and you each secretly place a bet on which of those pieces is going to go into the golden ring. And then you take it in turns to move a piece on your turn. But the whole thing is that you're obviously trying to get the piece that you want into the golden ring, but you're trying to do it without letting the other player know which piece it is, because they can call you out at some point and be like, I think you're trying to get that into the golden ring, and if they're correct, then they win. And you play like to win the golden ring each time. There's also a fun mechanic where if you choose the same color, the person who places the color into the ring loses. So you're kind of like hoping that you haven't chosen the same color and like trying to move pieces that you don't necessarily want to go in the ring. But it's like it's really, really good. But I never meet anyone who's ever heard of it. And I think it's that's like the Portuguese name for it. I think it's Sequoia. I think it means like you. I don't know. I actually can't remember what it's called, but what it means. But yeah, it's a really fun
Sounds
game.
interesting, and I've never heard of it. So passes the bar. Meehan?
Oh, can you skip over me, because I there's this game that you might have heard of, but I can't remember what it's called.
You sure? Yeah.
I remember what you do in it, and I remember what it looks like. So
you're going to frantically Google.
I'm frantically Googling right now.
I will pick out one. It's been a while since I played it, and I think I only ever played it in a prototype version. I'm not sure if it ever actually came out. But it's called the Old Hellfire Club, named after the kind of Victorian society, and I think it's by a designer called Jamie Frew. But it is kind of a card game. I'm probably not getting the details correct, so apologies. But I think it's kind of like a card game in the vein of The Extraordinary Adventures of Baron Munchausen, which is a great storytelling game that everyone should play. But the Old Hellfire Club is basically to do with like boasting in a bar. So like the kind of general aspect of it is that you are in a Victorian bar and you are trying to concoct these kind of extraordinary stories to impress the patrons. And I'm struggling to recall all the details because it's been a while since I played it. I have it tucked away somewhere, but I remember really enjoying it at the time. And also, I think it does a really nice job with the artwork, which I think uses like original Victorian art, but seeks out Victorian art that isn't just basically a load of white upper class men, like aristocratic men. So yeah, it's a cool game. Now that I'm actually speaking of it, like I need to go and find it and play it again because I remember really, really enjoying it. Like Baron Munchausen, which is, like I say, is a really, really good game. It's by James Wallace, who used to write for a magazine that I edited, for what it's worth. But that's like a good improv game where you basically similarly one-up everyone's stories as you go around the table.
I was just looking at the entry on Board Game Geek, and this game is actually available to play on Tabletopia for free.
Ah.
Yeah.
There you go.
The Old Hellfire Club. There it is.
Nice. Oh, yeah, The Secret Adventures of the Old Hellfire Club. I feel like it's changed name since I played it. But I think I got the broad strokes right.
Yeah, I was kind of scanning over it a little bit. Sounds about, yeah, what you were saying.
Yeah.
It sounds really fun, actually. It sounds like I definitely like to play games like that, which are like storytelling, but there's maybe not as much pressure as like having to be like a GM for an entire game kind of thing.
Yeah. We should play Baron Munchausen at some point. Baron Munchausen is very, very silly.
Okay.
It's very funny. It comes in a book about this thick, but there's literally one page of rules and the rest is just like riffing about stuff.
Okay.
But it is just literally like, I went to the moon, and then the next person's like, well, I heard you went to the moon, but didn't you go to the moon on an elephant? And then they have to kind of like, it's just yes and the game.
Right, okay.
But it's very good.
Oh, we should do
Meehan.
that for a stream or something. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's good.
that sounds fun. Improv comedy, basically. Okay, I found what the game is called. It's called King Frog.
Is it Colt
Have you heard of
Express?
this? No, it's not. Go away, Lolies. Can't believe you do me dirty like this.
You know what, Meehan? I think I have heard of this, but I've heard of it because you once told me about it.
Oh, no.
What's it called? King Kong. What?
King Frog.
It's called King Frog. Yeah, and I played it at a friend's house once. And yeah, I'd never heard of it before. But it's like a very easy game where you play as frogs and you have to play you have like a hand of cards that go up to I'm trying to remember what number. They go up to like a certain number. But then you have to like play.
I've played this. Yeah.
Okay, you've played this.
Yeah.
There you go. I've lost fully.
It's weird because I didn't recognize, but I just looked at the pictures and I have played it. I remember playing it. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to play like cards to try and hop onto the furthest lily pad, like ahead of the others, and the little playing pieces are absolutely adorable.
Yeah, very
yeah.
cute. The little smiley
froggies,
face and the little
frogs. And then when you win the title of King Frog, or either that or the green is always King Frog. I wondered whether you could take the crown off and give it to the player who won, but I think the green is King Frog. Anyway, King Frog. I like it.
Yeah, I am certain that this is one of those things where, in the way that you just sent me this box art once in kind of like, look at this, look how funny it is, like, look at this frog.
Look at this frog.
I do like the fact that on Board Game Geek it lists an alternate name as Quibbit.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Which I don't know if that's like in a different, like just ribbit in a different language, but I like the word Quibbit. It's very pleasing.
I like on the front of the box the frog that's behind the king frog, which is blue, which goes to serve perhaps my theory that the crown changes depending on who wins. But the frog behind the king frog, the way it's looking at King Frog is very much like, oh, I don't know. Just search the box art for King Frog.
King Frog, the blue King Frog on the front also looks like he's had a big lunch.
Yeah, that's a chunky
You don't want to be
frog.
jumping like that after a load of lunch. You're going to feel quite
a lot
quite
of
sick.
flies in that belly.
Yeah, but there we go. Thanks, Chris, for your question. And that is all of the questions that we have this week, and nearly all the time we have for this week's Dicebreaker podcast. Before we leave you, though, Alex Lolies, what's coming up on youtube.com/Dicebreaker?
I already mentioned that You've Never Played Tobago video will have been up, or will have gone up on Wednesday. So you should go check that out, because that was loads of fun, and it's a game that no one ever seems to know about, and that everyone should know about.
Well, like Colt Express, yeah.
That's what you call a callback. A comeback.
Oh,
I absolutely just
You botched it.
We're botching everything, I feel like, today.
Yeah, today is a messy one.
It was a busy day yesterday. We were getting a lot done. So
We've also already mentioned that Burn Bryte episode 1 should be going up tomorrow, approximately 3 p.m. BST. So you should go check that out. That'll be a 2-parter, and we had quite a fun adventure with some weird and wacky characters, as is the norm, I think, with Dicebreaker at this point. I'm not going to disclose what Sunday's video is going to be, just in case it changes, because it's what we've had bad luck in the past with saying things and them not working out.
Yeah,
and
the pod curse is real.
That one is a bit not as sure as some of the other ones, but I can tell you what's going to happen next week, because actually Wheels is off next week for the entire week.
I can't believe it.
My goodness.
I'm by myself on the video team.
Such decadence.
I can tell you that on Wednesday I plan to do a stream of Micro Macro, where I color in the map as I find like the clues to the little game. So that should be nice and chill on Wednesday. And on the Thursday, the three of us are planning to play Root, I believe, on stream.
Yeah, there's a new expansion out, the Riverfolk expansion.
This is the first I've heard of this.
Wait, but I have never played the base game.
It'll be fine.
Okay.
All the factions are different anyway. So
I can't believe you just dropped this bombshell on me in the middle of the podcast. I'm so excited.
So yeah,
my
that's what's
favourite
coming up
game.
in the next week. Lots of hype to be had. Keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And over on Dicebreaker.com, as well as the daily news from me and myself and Chase, our lovely news reporter, we have already up. We have a fantastic piece from Emma Steer about representation in board games, tabletop games, for disabilities, and the games doing it right, basically, including Arkham Horror, which I wasn't aware of, and Horrified, as well, which we've played on the channel.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really, really good piece, really interesting piece and important. So yeah, go and check it out. We had Sam Nelson wrote late last week, but after the podcast, so I didn't mention it, writing about kind of the state of tabletop conventions this year and kind of the return of things like Gen Con and PAX Unplugged and UK Games Expo after the pandemic and lockdown, and the different shape they may take as a result of kind of ongoing health and safety guidelines. So that's really good. Go and check it out. Meehan, you should have a list of the best board game art coming up, which I am very interested to read.
Hey!
I expect to see King Frog on there somewhere.
No, now don't you do this. Matt Jarvis is colouring this list in a very unprofessional light. This artwork list is fully curated with seriousness in mind.
Yes,
So
yeah, it's an art gallery of board games.
Yeah, because, like, you know, my subjective opinion on what's good board game art isn't necessarily shared by
Baron
the wider...
Park.
Yeah, don't you dare bring up Baron Park. Don't you let its name grace your lips. Yeah, it's gonna be a genuine list of the best board game
That's
artwork.
what I said. That's what I said. I can't believe you would imply any differently. It's fine.
Don't you dare try and act like you weren't doing what you're doing.
That'll be coming up soon. We've also got Jason Cole's checked it out. Strixhaven, the new Magic the Gathering set. Picked out some of the best Commander cards in there. No doubt we'll have some more Magic coverage soon enough. And next week, which won't be up by the time you hear this, Kieran is returning to these fair shores to write about Masks of Nyarlathotep, the Call of Cthulhu campaign, which runs over like multiple years, and how it kind of shows the right way to run an RPG campaign over like months and years, which is a really, really interesting piece. So yeah, lots to look forward to. And of course, like I say, news coverage and lots of indie RPG coverage from Chase as well. But that, for now, is this week's Dicebreaker podcast. Thank you for being here, Alex Lolies.
Thank you for being my friends.
You're very welcome. Thank you for being here, Alex Meehan.
Camel up, camel up, camel up, camel up, camel up, camel up.
I've been Matt Jarvis. Thank you for listening. Stay safe out there. Look after yourselves. And until we meet again next Friday for another episode of the Dicebreaker podcast, have a lovely day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.